Hello and welcome to this month's edition of Backchat from the Ark in Headingley. And as ever, a very splendid guest list joins us as well today. Danny Lockwood, who's the publisher of League Weekly, a rugby league newspaper. Peter Smith from the Yorkshire Evening Post, and also Phil Kaplan from 4020 magazine. A very good welcome to you all. And as ever, lots to talk about. Let's start with the Challenge Cup, because that's next on the horizon. A semi-final, sellout crowd, Leeds against Hull. Hopefully a big crowd, Wigan against Salford. Who knows who is going to Wembley? Phil, who's going to Wembley?
We don't know. You've just told. From a romantic point of view, it would be nice for Salford to get there. I think we've had a run since 2014 of an unusual name being at the Cup final. So Castleford were there, but hordes of their fans. It was new to them. Hull KR came down, really made the occasion. Hull came and won at Wembley, and that was a story. I think in terms of romance, which, if we were honest, is sadly lacking in the Challenge Cup at the moment. Salford getting there, not having been there since, 1969, not won it since 1938, that would be good for the sport. I think there's an 80 minutes in Salford. They're stumbling a little bit in the league, although we should praise the fact that their top four finish, although it isn't a finish, no doubt we'll debate when the season does actually finish, that currently top four when we've had the split is their best for 40 odd years. Yeah. I think they've got 80 minutes. They could get to Wembley. Wigan at the moment are flattering a little to deceive. The Leeds and Hull one, I wouldn't even know where to begin to decide who's the favourite for that one.
Yeah, I mean, two quality sides in Leeds against Hull, and two sides who may be stumbling a bit for form in Wigan against Salford, which is what makes it unpredictable.
It is, and I think there's a lot rests on this weekend, and not just in terms of the Challenge Cup. I think this will define what happens with Super League. You look at Wigan and you look at the players that they've got back now, and you think there's no excuse for them to be faltering the way they are. I thought that they were the very unflattering performance against a team of Leeds kids, basically, last week. But still, you feel that they've got the cup pedigree, that they've got the big game in them, that they've got that ability to ratchet it up. And I'm not sure that's there with Salford. I mean, that was a big surprise. Not just the defeat to Leeds, but the margin of it. And the fact is, you can say, well, one eye on the cup. I'm not so sure.
You can't do that, really,
I'm not so sure.
No.
They've now lost, 6 out of 7?
Yep.
And that is worrying. I think that's worrying for Salford for the end of the season, for the Super 8s. But, for this weekend, I think that they're a long shot right now.
Yeah. If Salford won, though, you get a sense that could be the making of that club. A lot of hullabaloo this year as to, why aren't the crowds coming in at Salford? If they got a trip to Wembley, then that could just be the spark that starts the fire.
Like it was for Sheffield Eagles.
Like it was for Bradford Bulls, though, in '96.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, we all think Salford are a big club in waiting, but at the moment, they're just not, are they? They're miles away from it, the crowds they're getting. I'm not sure whether a run to Wembley will be enough. There's a lot of things, a lot of factors behind it. And they're playing good rugby, I think. I think on the day they're one of the most attractive teams to watch in the competitions. They played. They've been in the top 2, 3, 4 all season, and they're still playing in front of crowds of 3,000 or 4,000. Yeah. And you just wonder what is it going to take to get people through the gates.
But the magic of the Cup, they're outselling Wigan for semi-final tickets.
Yes.
So.
But we're not talking 15,000, 20,000 now. We're talking about 5,000.
Yeah.
I think if getting to Wembley didn't do it, Dave, then I think that the owner, Dr. Kukash, would have to sit down and scratch his head and wonder exactly what it would take. Because if getting to Wembley doesn't do it, and if we all got to Wembley and one end of the stadium was half empty.
But what do we expect from a crowd from Salford? In their heyday, in the mid-70s, when they were signing all the great rugby union talent and the Friday night experience at the Willows, almost invented that kind of rugby league occasion that we see now so regularly, they were only getting 7,000 or 8,000. So what do we realistically expect? If they got to Wembley, I think there would be a carryover. But they've talked too much themselves about maybe changing the name, or they're always looking for something extra. Surely the only thing that does it is your performances on the field, a consistent run, some juniors coming through. The issue at Salford for me isn't about the fans, it's about the infrastructure at the club. Yeah. That even if they were to get to Wembley, it doesn't hide the fact that there's no reserve grade, no academy, no real roots at the moment in the part of Salford that they are. The constant want to change, I think, is the issue there. That they were one drop goal away from being in the Championship, and you wonder what Salford would look like now, rather than being on the verge of Wembley.
Yeah.
So are we expecting too much that suddenly 15,000 people would come out of the woodwork and support them? It's a gradual thing, and if they get to Wembley, that would be great for the sport because it gives the neutral something to hang on to. If it's a, I don't know, a Wigan Hull or a Wigan Leeds final, it's just another Super League game at a different venue.
But it's a bit like Hardy's hero in Far From the Madding Crowd, staring and gazing at the Oxford bright lights and knowing he can't be there. And Salford is similar in that they look over the River Irwell or over the Manchester Ship Canal and they see the bright lights of Manchester. If only they could tap into what's in Manchester, they could be massive.
We'd like to think so, but if it hasn't happened after, 130 years of or whatever it is now, the sport, it's highly unlikely to. I think there are bigger questions afoot in Manchester with Rugby League anyway, but I think Salford's problem is more immediate than that. I think it is just about turning an organic operation into something that's sustainable. Yep. And that means getting those crowds up to 4,000 and 5,000. The name is Salford, the name isn't Manchester, and I think that would be just a marketing exercise, a papering over of the existing cracks, Dave, and I don't think it is a solution to their problem. Maybe we just have to be realistic and say that a 4,000 or 5,000 crowd is a Super League level crowd for some clubs now, and that they have to learn to live within them, their means, which they've done fantastically, I have to say. They've lived on a budget this year. In Ian Watson, I think they've had a real success story of a coach. And I like the noises that are coming out of Dr. Kukas these days, which hasn't always been the case. I do think that there is something there for Salford, and I don't think that we can suddenly magic wand them into a Wigan or a Leeds or a St Helens.
It's an amazing transformation this year, and if they can keep that going and enhance on it by at least being credible in this semi-final, ideally for them getting to Wembley, then they are building something sustainable. But then they're only going to do it on the field. Their recruitment is really interesting. The Manu Vatuvei signing at this moment, is that a hark back to the Salford of 2 years ago? There's a big name available, even though he hasn't played a lot of rugby, we'll bring him in. That'll bring the crowds in. Will that upset the equilibrium that Ian Watson has managed to gain this year by having a unity of purpose within a dressing room? Now, somebody like Todd Carney, who's played very little rugby since they brought him in, seems to be part of this, I'll play my part, rather than I'm a big star, you need to play me every week. So things are changing there, but I don't think we can expect them overnight to suddenly become a Wigan or a Leeds.
And we're very sensitive at this time of the year, I think Rugby League diehards are very sensitive as to, by the way, the errant literal, it was due the obscure, not Far From the Madding Crowd, before everybody starts on Twitter, which they always do. We're very sensitive at this time of the year, aren't we? Who do we want to win the semi-finals? Because we want to see Wembley full. Well, here we are as a game who wants, as an ambition, to see Toronto and Catalan do well. Heaven help us if Toronto and Catalan ever reach a final, because Wembley won't even be a quarter full in those circumstances. Well,
that's unfortunately, that's a concern, but Wembley isn't full most years. Now, that's a deeper question, isn't it? Rather than, you'd like to think that the Challenge Cup final would sell out whoever gets there. It is the big showpiece occasion of the sport, and it doesn't, and that's a real worry, and that's something that the sport needs to address. There's a lot of questions about the Challenge Cup now and the format and its place in the season and why it's declined so much over the summer era. When I think it's not worked moving it to August.
I know they're tied in at the moment with the BBC contract, aren't they? But I think there is a groundswell of emotive opinion that it belongs in May, Dave, and it belongs earlier in the year.
It's no secret that the BBC want to move it and have wanted to move it for the last 2 or 3 years. That is not a secret. It's the choice of the game to keep it where it is.
And the choice of who in the game, though, because I think obviously you're talking about the governing body, but I think if you talk to players and fans, they would like to see it move back to May. You play it as an early season competition, and it gives the year, the calendar, a much better balance.
Is it the magic weekend that kind of?
I think that's a concern.
Feast anyway, isn't
it? The concern for the RFL is they're very committed to the magic weekend, or they seem to be. And if you have the Challenge Cup final in May, then you couldn't have them. You couldn't have them both.
You can move
and
magic.
I think at the moment that they would prefer to have the.
And there was a fault with the Challenge Cup being played in May, hence why it was moved to August in the first place. I mean, let's not consider it to be an entire panacea, but it does feel as though it'd be a better place in May.
Going back to Salford, the problem I think for them is that there's a 6-week gap between the quarter-final and the semi-final. So the euphoria and the ticket buying early on, people queuing to get tickets because they are 80 minutes from Wembley is dissipated when your game is 6 weeks later and you've lost 5 of those 6 games. So I think the structure of the competition needs looking at, but also what do we want from the Challenge Cup these days? I mentioned early on that I think the romance has gone. There isn't going to be a Featherstone winning the Cup anymore.
No.
Now that we have got such a core of the game that is full-time and the other half that is part-time, it's an unbridgeable gap.
You say that, but you know, not that long ago, you'd have never even imagined that Castleford would ever finish top of the table. I mean, there is a movable feast to the game.
I'm not sure. I think the indication of how far we've lost the romance of the Challenge Cup came at the quarter-final stage this year when Leeds played Featherstone at Headingley. Apart from the fact there are issues of dual registration between the two clubs, which doesn't sit comfortably, Featherstone were ordered to play a league game the following midweek. They prioritised those two league games ahead of the Cup. The romance of the Cup doesn't exist in terms of the hard economic reality of the Championship.
Well, what about Swinton beating Huddersfield this year? What about Oldham beating Hull KR last year?
But neither of those clubs were going to go on and win the tournament.
Yeah. I think
that's the issue.
Well, I mean, that's the same with them. I mean, the FA Cup in football, you get third round shocks from teams who have not got a million years of winning the FA Cup.
But you also
you've got 90 odd teams out there playing, Dave, and it's a different dynamic. And I think you look at that Swinton Huddersfield match, for example, when Huddersfield really disrespected the competition and Swinton, you know, by putting out not even half a side, and they paid a price for it. Now, does that tell you that that was just bad management and they came unstuck, or they really don't care? Well, whichever one of those it isn't good enough, and it doesn't reflect well on the competition.
Yeah, whatever team they put out, they would have expected to win, though, wouldn't they? Right, the other semi-final. First, who's going to win? Salford, Wigan?
Wigan.
Heart says Wigan, but I'd really like Salford to do it.
I think Salford are going to win. I think they've had their minds on this for 6 weeks. I think, as Phil says, they've got a big game in them. They remind me a little bit of what was being said before Hull KR played Warrington a couple of years ago. I think there's going to be a shock and Salford will win.
OK, we'll see. Now, the other semi-final, Leeds against Hull. This is going to be a sellout crowd. Pete, you first. Leeds were missing 15 first-team players last week against Wigan. 15! How many of them are going to be back?
Well, you say 15, and that's a little bit misleading because the 15 included fringe players who were injured and might have played against Wigan, but wouldn't really be in the reckoning for the Challenge Cup semi-final. It is a lot of players missing, but I would think that of the ones who dropped out from the game against Hull the week before, I think there was 8. The only one that won't play will be Keith Galloway, who snapped his Achilles.
Yeah, he's gone for the season.
Yeah, he's gone for the season. I think the others will all be back. I'm told that they all genuinely did have injuries of some sort, but clearly, had it been that everybody's playing injured at this stage, had it been the Challenge Cup semi-final last week, I think all apart from Galloway would have played. It's one of those, was he right to rest the players or not decisions. I mean, we won't really know until full time on Saturday. Yeah. But were Leeds to win against Hull, they're not going to get another rest this season, so I think it was the last opportunity to do that. The position on the league table meant for Leeds it didn't really do them any harm. Yeah. So it's probably justifiable, and it's earned them a home game against Wigan in the 8s, where they've not lost to Wigan at home since 2012. Rather than going there and they've a poor record at the DW.
Ian Millwall did that a few years ago, and everyone went ballistic, and he got fined.
I thought it was shameful. I thought it was absolutely shameful, inexcusable.
Just on the Ian Millwall point, though, the difference was under the squad naming rules. It wasn't a case of everyone went expecting Leeds to field the strongest team. Everyone that played was in the initial.
And that makes it right, do you think?
I don't think it does. I'm just saying that
Leeds had absolutely earned the right by their finishing position to pick that team, knowing that the games that were coming up, you can't rotate your squad. Before we had the 8s, there was a likelihood if you got to Wembley or you're on the road to the grand final, you would be playing a team that was towards the bottom of the league, that you could probably bring some youngsters in. I remember Leeds playing a game at London before they played in the Challenge Cup final. A lot of youngsters made their debut. They lost that game. I think it was the only game that London won that season, but Leeds went on and performed creditably in the cup final. They earned the right to do that.
Yeah, I won't disagree with that. I just still think that it leaves a bad taste in the mouth. I think
it's understandable, isn't it? I think in an ideal world we'd rather not see it happen. Yeah. We'd rather see a Wigan. I mean, Wigan Leeds is a big fixture, but and it was the dullest 80 minutes.
But the other thing with that is they could still play each other 3 more times this season.
Well, phone up and throw the points then or something, Dave. I just think.
Actually, Leeds got more out of it than Wigan did. I think the Leeds youngsters' defence on their own line actually was probably more productive in the review sessions than Wigan not being able to score the 60 points that were expected.
And that's what Super League has come to now.
Yeah, sometimes that kind of thing. So I mean, I remember when Kevin Brown made his debut for Wigan against St Helens. That was a night when Wigan played a load of youngsters, and they actually beat St Helens, and it was one of the great, great nights of Super League. So that can happen as well.
But we also might be going back to that game to say in years to come that Alex Sutcliffe made his debut that night and went on to play 16 glorious years like Rob Burrow and Danny Maguire. And getting back to the semi-final, they're going to be a factor. Even though Burrow won't play, suddenly now Leeds have got this almost 2015 about them, that the retiring future Hall of Famers. Does that tilt the balance to them, or do we look to Hull because they are actually looking to retain the trophy that they invested so much emotion in winning last year?
Yeah, who do we look to?
I think it's a real toss of a coin fixture. It's whoever turns up on the day. I would really, really struggle to separate them. I think that more importantly will be that whoever wins it is going to make a rod for their backs going forward in the playoffs, because I think if Leeds get to Wembley, I fancy Hull in the Super 8s. If Hull do it, we saw what happened to them last year. Yeah, by sort of August 2016, they populated half of the dream team, and yet once they got to Wembley and won that, the steam just went, and they might as well have packed in for the rest of the playoffs. But they would have
learned from that, I suspect.
Well, you'd like to think so, but
they play very, very good cup tie football at the moment. I think there's a similarity between Wigan and Hull in that they are very much forward dominated. It's almost intimidatory with the size of their wingers, never mind the men in the middle. It could come down to goal kicking, in which case Mark Sneyd becomes very valuable for Hull. Leeds don't have a regular dead-eye goal kicker. I don't think you can call this one.
Oh, okay, well, we'll see. We're looking
forward
to it.
Golden point extra time.
Golden point extra time. Get your money on that. Danny Lockwood says so. Right, that's it for part one of this month's Back Chat. We'll be back for part two in just a few moments' time.
If you think rugby league's just a game for youngsters, think again. Masters Rugby League is a new form of the game, specially created for the over 35s. From full contact to non-contact, there's a pair of shorts for everyone. Get fit, make friends, have fun. To find your nearest Masters Rugby League club, just search Masters Rugby League online or drop us an email.
Hello and welcome to part two of this month's Back Chat from the Arc in Headingley. Just to tell you the guests, Danny and Peter and Phil as well. We've talked about the semi-finals coming up. Really looking forward to the semi-finals of the Challenge Cup this weekend. But what about the league season that we've just had? Castleford finished 10 points clear at the top of the Super League table, plus 368 million points, more than anybody else. They've beaten everybody in Super League. I think they've only lost 3 times, and yet they're not being crowned champions yet. Is that a flaw in the game? Peter, I'm going to start with you.
No, that's the format. Everybody knows the rules before the season begins. That's the way it works. I don't think it's a flaw. There'll be questions asked if they finish 10 points clear at the end of the Super 8s and then don't win the grand final.
Yeah.
I think that will raise questions about the value of the system, but not at the moment. No, the first 23 rounds are qualifying rounds for the Super 8s. Yeah. So I don't see a problem with it.
They don't get anything for it, and when they win the League Leaders Shield,
they win the big silver hook
in 2 or 3 weeks' time.
And I think that
no one cares. No one cares, apart from Cas fans who love it. Fantastic.
I think that the game at large cares, Dave, and I think that we'll all celebrate it. And I hope that something is made of it, because they're going to be anointed well before the end of the season. There's another couple of weeks that can basically seal it. We won't have a helicopter flying over the Pennines waiting to see where it's going to land to give the the League Leaders Shield. Okay, we can even put it second class Royal Mail and it'll get there in time this year. But I do think that we have a duty as a sport to celebrate it when they are anointed. And if we're talking to ourselves, we're talking to ourselves. The fact is, you can't take away the good news story that Castleford Tigers have been this year. They've reinvented Super League to me, and I think I think it will be a crying shame if they don't go all the way. I think they will go to Old Trafford for sure, because they're going to have a home semi-final against whoever finishes fourth.
Yeah.
Now that could be, looking at the league table now, that could be Wigan or St Helens, which we would not have said 4, 5, 6 weeks ago. But if Salford and Wakefield do find a bit of form and they get into that fourth spot, then I think it's a smooth passage all the way to Old Trafford, and we'll have a great grand final.
We need to invest more prestige in finishing top of the league. We being the game as a whole, and I mean, I know it wasn't meant, but disparagingly, we call it the hubcap.
Yeah.
It's not the hubcap. We need to perhaps get the championship trophy out, make it something really prestigious. If we're going to call it a shield, it needs to be like the JJ Giltinan Shield in Australia that needs 6 people to carry it around. We need to call it something. It needs to be the Neil Fox Shield. We also need to invest something on and off the field. We need to give them a week off under any structure. Whatever the restructure is, the champions deserve a week off. They need to be in the World Club Series Challenge.
Which is probably not going to happen anyway. So that's
but if you could imagine that Castleford, within the next 2 or 3 weeks, finish top of the league, and know that the following February they are entertaining an Australian team.
But
that would be the biggest.
I mean, they don't want to entertain an Australian team. We've had this debate before. Castleford, because they've got to make, you've got to make financial commitments to host that game. So I think that's a bit of a red herring.
We've got to decide what we want the World Club Challenge or Series to be. If it's going to cost a club to be in it and they choose not to be in it, there's something wrong with the way we're structuring the series.
But that's an NRL decision to be made, isn't it? That's the NRL clubs who've got to make that decision. We can't make that decision.
The game needs to make the decision as to how prestigious is the World Club Challenge.
Yeah.
And if it is, and Castleford win it and decline to be in it, our game looks remarkably small. But but going back to the League Leaders Shield, Huddersfield winning it, the first trophy after 80 odd years, meant something.
Yep, it meant something to them.
Yeah, Leeds winning it in the manner in which they won it.
No, it didn't. No, it didn't.
Because they won the treble.
No, it didn't. Because, well, why did they elect to go for a penalty in front of the sticks to get 2 points to draw the game, which will guarantee they finished second?
Because that's a default position. They still had the wherewithal to win the game.
But that wasn't in the mindset. I mean, what we need to do is to create the League Leaders Trophy Shield, the Neil Fox Trophy. We've got to make that such a winnable thing that the big clubs, the clubs who do win it on a regular basis, want to win it desperately.
Well, that has to, and that comes down to reward, doesn't it? Well, yes. and that can be either financial or it can be an incentive in terms of, whatever. But there has got to be something that makes it worth winning. And right now, I think, whether it's illusion or not, there is not that feeling around it.
Well, you make it worth winning, but I disagree with this. I accept that I'm in a minority, but I think the big prize is the grand final. And you can't have two big prizes.
What
you
is
can't
that measure?
Oh, we're
what
champions because we finished top. We're champions because we won the grand final. It has to be one
I love
or the
grand
other.
final. I love the grand final. I think the grand final is fantastic, and I hope the grand final is here to stay. And it's superb. But what is it measuring? When you've won the grand final, what does that measure? What does that tell you about that club?
It's the prize for the
St Helens. I had a bet with a mate of mine the other week. I think St Helens will make the grand final this year. It's only a small bet. So St Helens win the grand final, and they'll have played brilliantly to have done that. And great if they win the grand final. But that doesn't measure their season.
Yes,
they sacked their coach halfway through the season because they weren't good enough.
If you equate this
they had 3 months of being so bad they sacked the coach.
But if you equate this to a Grand Prix, then your qualifying is to get you pole position. Castleford will have pole position. If they misfire during the Grand Prix and St Helens come from 5th and overtake them and win it, we don't say, oh, because you were ahead of qualifying, you've won the Grand Prix. You win on the final whistle of the final day of the final match. And the other thing is, we are desperate for events. As a sport. We have to have events. The Grand Final now finishes with an event that draws a bigger crowd than the Challenge Cup final at the moment. So it can't be wrong. We can't change that.
That's exactly my point. And if you put more emphasis on the League Leaders Shield, I'm sorry, but you're going to take away the emphasis from the grand final.
I don't think
it's like Phil's talking about a motor race. It's a bit like the triathlon. You can be miles clear at the end of the bike in the triathlon, but you still have to win the run. It's about doing both. But the rounds are the qualification for the grand final. I think you have to leave it like that. I mean, have a trophy for finishing top, but I don't think it should be.
The fans are not
I
buying
don't
into
think
that.
it should be.
The fans are not buying into the system that we've got. The fans are not buying in.
The reward is what the reward is. To put in pole position, to be in first place, to have the luxury, as they will, of rotating lads for maybe 2 or 3 or 4 rounds before they face that a home semi-final, big incentive, not against the Leeds or a Hull, if it's as the table is now, but against the weakest of the sides that have qualified for the semis. That's a massive incentive. I think that's all part of what the process is. But that, you know, it's a fantastic atmosphere, is that Saturday night in October at Old Trafford. And every player, as much as they all want to walk out at Wembley, Dave, they want to be there and feel that in the theatre of dreams. And so I don't think there's too much wrong with where we are right now. I think we can raise the profile of the League Leaders Shield. There should be more of a reward and an incentive. But that will be special to Castleford when that moment arrives.
Especially as they've never finished top of the league in their history.
And it will all add to the story and the legend of then finishing the job at Old Trafford.
I remember when Huddersfield won the League Leaders Shield. They beat Wakefield. I was at that game, and they made a big thing of presenting the shield, and it felt like, well, hey, we've done something. And I thought they're not going to win another game now, and they lost both the semi-finals. Which would they have rather had? They'd much rather have gone to Old Trafford and won the grand final. Who remembers Huddersfield now as
well, I think everyone does. I think everyone remembers Huddersfield were the league leaders. They were the league leaders.
They do. I think it's the grand final.
They would remember them more if they had won the grand final. I'll grant you that. But I think
because they put emphasis on winning the League Leaders Shield, I think it took away.
That's down to something within their organisation that they couldn't transform.
Yeah, a bit like Sheffield when they won the cup in '98.
Possibly, but
couldn't go out and sell it.
That's the danger when you put more emphasis, I say, on the League Leaders Shield.
You just don't call the team that win the League Leaders Shield the champions. The champions title is reserved for.
So what's wrong with league leaders then? Well, that's what they are. They've led the league.
Because it would be better if it was called something like the Brian Bevan Shield.
Yeah, not naming Shield just sounds rubbish.
You mentioned fans aren't buying into it. I think fans aren't buying into the length of the season.
Well, they're not buying into the playoffs. The crowds generally.
I think if the playoffs were starting next week, and the season started a month later, I think you'd find there would be massive buy. We have got familiarity breeding contempt at the moment.
And you're right, because Leeds could end up playing Wigan about half a dozen times this season or whatever. And that is an old problem with the format, and that's what's going to be thrown up every year. But I think the bigger thing for me now is these Super 8s. This could be the last year. We understand we're going to go around again.
Here we go again.
But the thing is this: last year when Wakefield literally crawled into 8th spot, their season there was over, their race was run, and the teams in 6th, 7th and 8th were out of it. You look at that table this year, Dave, and you could perhaps say that Huddersfield are going to struggle, although they've had some form.
They could be
certainly Wigan and Saints will be fancying a run at that top 4. We've not had that so far in this system.
But by the same token, that's purely down to Castleford being 10 points clear.
Yeah. I think this is going to be the best 8s we've had, and if this had been the first, if this had happened in the first year, there'd have been no debate about whether we should carry on with the 8s. This is going to be fantastic 8s because St Helens, Wigan, they've got. I mean, you say Huddersfield, they are outsiders, but they've all got a chance now of making the 4, and they're all going to give it a massively good go, aren't they?
No, I think that's right. I mean, look at Saints. Saints kept themselves right in it by winning at Wakefield on Sunday, and that meant a lot to them. They were celebrating at the end like as if they'd won something. It was a big game for Saints, and it wouldn't have been under previous circumstances. Going back to Wigan and Leeds, I'm sure Wigan would have liked to have rested people the week before the Challenge Cup semi-final, but they couldn't because they needed to win to stay in the race for to climb off out of 8th spot. And I think that's the beauty of this format. It doesn't work in every respect, but I think in that way it does have its merits. Yeah. And it is going to be very interesting next 7 weeks.
So why have we got the debate again? Because some club owners want us to go to 13 or 14 clubs and get rid of the system. It's dull. It's killing the sport. It's killing the game.
I think the issue isn't the 8s per se. There is some merit in an 8 structure.
Yeah.
But I think we are playing too many games. It's not about which structure we want, it's how many games do we want to play, and 30 rounds is too much. You get to the point at this stage in the season where you've got 3 or 4 weeks between going from what we're calling the regular season into the 8th season, where it feels a bit like treading water. And the issue this year has been exacerbated by the fact that we've had 2 double weekends. And every single squad is suffering, no matter what depth they've got, no matter how good their juniors are. You speak to coaches, they're barely training at the moment. It's all about rehabilitation and hopefully getting to a captain's run where everybody who's going to be playing can train. That can't be right. That's not good for the sport. And it's giving us games that aren't desperately enjoyable to watch either. So something needs to change.
And we've got a World Cup, let's not forget, coming up straight on the back of this gruelling campaign. And so if, and we hope not, but if England again fail at the semi-final stage and we're having the post-mortems again and we're all going to say we're playing too many games because we took a squad down there that was busted up and patched together, and so we'll go around in the same circle again. And I think that the fact is that we have too many games, and you will not find anybody that will argue with that apart from, you know, the club accountant who is you know, but the fact that we're getting diminishing returns in terms of the gates makes that point that we've got to change.
But if we're saying the 8th is great, we're saying the 8th is great, and it is, and we're saying at home and away we've got to play everyone at home and away, and magic actually works, so let's keep magic. Where do we cut the games? How do we cut the games?
We're not necessarily saying the 8th is great. I think the top 5 is actually the greatest playoff system that we've had.
But how do you work that in the season then?
Well, I think it depends how many rounds you want. I would prefer a 24 round season. So that would be home and away, and then you'd have magic and an on-the-road weekend, which would balance out magic. That's 24 rounds. You then would have your playoffs over 3 weeks. So it's virtually based on the 8s, but it isn't. And for me, 6, 7 and 8 wouldn't play. Their season would finish after 24 rounds. You'd go straight to a top 5. At the bottom, you would play off to see who is in the £1 million game. There'd be one Super League team, there'd be one Championship team, so it's semi-finals and a final, and then into the £1 million game. It can be whatever you want it to be, but I don't think we should play more than 27 rounds, including the playoffs.
Would you not get a raft of clubs in the middle then who could find themselves with nothing left to play for?
Well, but the trouble is, and it goes back to something that Danny was saying, in the first year of the 8s, Castleford lost £100,000. In the second year of the 8s, Wakefield lost £60,000. I don't see the point of running a competition that is going to cost clubs money. And if you finish 8th and you're Huddersfield, and actually, you know, your season ends and you're starting to send your players off for the operations that they need, you're making your signings for next year because you know you're going to be in Super League, I'm not sure that's a bad thing. I think also with, yes, it would be great this year if Wigan and Saints have a say because we're playing the 8s, but if their league season was over because they weren't good enough over the 24 rounds to be in the top 5, then again that makes the games leading up to the top 5 even more important. I don't think it's about the structure. We've probably all got an idea of what the different structure and how it would work. To me, if we're ever going to beat Australia or New Zealand, we have to play them on a level playing field, and the one that we don't, aside from they have more players to choose from, is that they play a quarter of a year less than we do. We have to only play 27 games. Goes back to Salford. How will they get more crowds? Perhaps if they played less games. Then I think if you're only playing Wigan at home once, it's a must-go-to game.
I think so. And look, we do this every year, don't we? We overanalyse. The fact is there will always be, in whatever structure you have, teams for whom there's not much left to play for in the last quarter of the season. That just is what it is, and we've got to get on with it. But these are professional athletes. They're all playing for contracts. They all want to, you know, they want to put their hand up for a Wales World Cup spot, or if they're not in England contention. So we've got to have a little bit of faith in the fact that there is professional pride in these guys and that they're still going to deliver us some kind of a spectacle. But the bottom line will always be about money, and the clubs that want to go to 13 teams, Dave, would love to have Hull KR back at any cost because Hull KR have a good travelling support. You know, they wouldn't, if it came at the expense of Catalans going down to the Championship, they'd love that even more. And they are businessmen running these clubs, and they are quite selfish, and that is the bottom line on it. Now within that, you know, those of us that aren't invested in it have to hopefully come up with something that appeals to the wider public.
That's the problem, isn't it? We've got people running the game effectively who are running clubs primarily and are making decisions based on what's best for their own club.
That's right.
We got the fact that we've not got A teams is based on clubs saying don't work for us, so we're not having A teams. When in fact, for the good of the game, it would be much better. So do we need a stronger RFL? Do we need an RFL to stamp their feet and say this is what's happening?
Can I have a stronger RFL under the constitution of the sport? I mean, do we need to go back to an independent board of directors who are making decisions on behalf of the clubs? Do we say to the clubs, you get your £2.5 million or whatever it is you're going to get from central funding, but that entitles you to play a range of fixtures? We'll determine where the sport is going. I think we're at a bit of a crossroads at the moment as regards the sport. What do we want ourselves to be? We're looking at, for example, you mentioned Catalan, they're still getting 8,000 to 9,000.
Yeah.
There aren't too many clubs that can get that. We're talking about where Toronto are going to go over the next 2 or 3 years. They've had meaningless games to play with the greatest respect to the opposition coming over. Every game has been exactly the same.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to have to stop you there because we're out of time, part 2. But there'll be more meaningful discussion in part 3 of Back Chat. Join us in the Arc in just a few moments' time.
If you think rugby league's just a game for youngsters, think again. Masters Rugby League is a new form of the game, specially created for the over 35s. From full contact to non-contact, there's a pair of shorts for everyone. Get fit, make friends, have fun. To find your nearest Masters Rugby League club, just search Masters Rugby League online or drop us an email.
So welcome to the third and final part of Back Chat from the Arc at Headingley. We talked about the semi-finals, Cup semi-finals, really looking forward to those. What's happened in Super League? What about the Championship? Because I mean, absolutely fascinating finish to the Championship. We'll start at the bottom first.
Yep.
Bradford Bulls.
Yep.
Should they be relegated now, or should the RFL do something to keep them in the Championship?
I think everybody in the Championship would love to see Bradford Bulls find a way to stay up. I think there's a big question at the moment over Swinton Lions and their survival anyway.
Yeah.
As things stand, you'd say that Bradford are going to be playing League One next year, which will be a great loss to the competition, but those are the rules and that's just the way it is. I personally think that I would not be surprised to see changes structurally that would somehow lever Bradford back into the Championship next year, because the crowds that they bring, you know, outweigh everybody else in the comp, and I think that there is still a view that the Super League clubs would love to see Bradford back where they belong, and the sooner the better.
Well, there's a name there. There's no playing there, is there? I mean, they've been dreadful this season.
They've been absolutely woeful, and I mean, I know that they are supposedly full time, but I can tell you that Jeff Tuvey has been out there at training sessions when he's had 8 or 9 or 10 lads, you know, going through the motions, and I don't think that he is very impressed with what he inherited. Yeah. And of course we have the situation this week where the lads who are still at Bradford, a lot of them are suing their own club, the old club that no longer exists, and the RFL, which is an absolutely astonishing state of affairs. So it is a mess. I think they just need this season out of the way, and they need to start again to Bradford.
And you also say that they've been woeful. They have, but they have actually won 6 games. And if they hadn't been deducted the 12 points, which is another issue about whether they should have been and what division they should be playing in, they actually wouldn't even be in a relegation position at the moment. So I think we just made a mess of this year for Bradford.
Talking they made a decent fist of it themselves, though.
But talking but a 12-point deduction, I'm not sure they were ever going to get over.
Well, what do you do?
You talk to their fans; they would have rather have started this year in League One.
Yeah.
And
they would now, Phil.
No, I think
but
they
at the start of the season, they looked at Swinton, they looked at Rochdale.
I'm not sure. I think they wanted to be at the beginning of a journey, a bit like Rangers Football Club were. And I think that the way that they played this year, they would have been in the top 4 of League One. They'd have been looking forward to a playoff against teams like Toronto and Barrow and York. And actually, they possibly would have got the second promotion position. They would have then been starting the Championship next year on merit, rather than we're trying to find ways to keep them in the Championship.
Of course they should have started in League One. It's just natural justice, isn't it? They were supposedly a new club.
Yeah.
That would have been the obvious thing to do. I think that's what would have happened in most
I think there was a sense. I think that the punishment was handed down and was seen as being fair. I think Bradford took that. I think that they believed that they could still find enough points from somewhere to stay up. And for a number of reasons, obviously Jeff Tuvey's employment position wasn't made clear until 2/3 of the way through the season. You know, it has been a perfect storm of things that have gone wrong for Bradford. I think that the owners now, I think they're invested for the long term, Dave. I think it's about rebuilding trust with the fans. I think it comes down now not to what goes on at Bradford, but what goes on in the heads of the other clubs around them.
Yeah. I think the worry as well is that they are starting to develop some good young players who are all going to be picked off. So you're always starting again. That's the problem. Whereas if they'd have gone down, kept a core of young kids as their team and moved those up through the ranks, that's sustainability.
Okay, well let's look at the other end, the kind of the good news end of the table. I mean, Halifax, what an achievement by Halifax. Toulouse winning their final game dramatically, and then Halifax winning as they did against Hull KR. That was terrific.
That's fantastic, and the teams are beaten at the death to get in there.
Yeah, fantastic run. Great run.
Just incredible, and it was so much needed for a club that are finding life difficult at the moment financially. It's great for them. I'm not sure how they're going to do in the qualifiers, but a bit like Featherstone last year, just getting in there is a massive achievement, and it's great for the club. This is another big club. I mean, they finished, was it 3rd in Super League, early days of Super League? This is another big club.
John Pendlebury was coach.
Yeah, another big club that's fallen on hard times, but it's nice to see them producing some good results. And I think though there was a little bit of, I don't know if controversy is the right word, but the fact that Hull KR went into the game knowing that basically they'd be better off if they lost. I'm not saying they threw the game. I don't think teams throw a game, but I don't think Hull KR would have been particularly bothered about the result. I think in situations like that, everybody should kick off at the same time, just to take that question mark away. But well done, Halifax.
The Halifax story for me is that the players agreed to take a 10% pay cut because the club had, again, perhaps the floor of the 8s at Championship level. They got £450,000 one year. The following year, when they didn't get in the 8, £250,000. The club has to make cuts. The players agreed to. They've now made the top 4. They've got that 10% back. That is a fantastic story, and full credit to the players.
Yeah, and Dewsbury, I mean, they've not made the top 4, Dewsbury, but under Neil Kelly, they've had a great year as well.
Dewsbury, I think, are one of the stories of the season. I mean, Neil Kelly was out of the game from, I think it was 2010 to 2017. He had one bad year at Widnes, basically, and a little bit of an unhappy time at Leigh when he had a brief return to Rugby League. He's been in Rugby Union for the rest of the time. He's been wanting to get back into Rugby League. No one's taken a chance on him. His old club, Dewsbury, where he made his name, did eventually, and he's just, I mean, you've got to wonder why no one else did that. He's revolutionised things at Dewsbury. I think they've won, I think it's 7 out of 15 games under him, but 7 out of the last 10, and the record is astonishing. Not only have they pulled clear of relegation, and it looks like now that they're not mathematically safe, but it looks like they'll stay up. They've actually finished 8th, so they're in the top half of the Championship Shield draw. They get 4 home games, and they'd lost all 8 of their league games before he took over. It's a remarkable transformation.
You know, I think his name will be when we come round to the awards season at the end of the year.
I would argue now that he's the coach of the year.
You know, but when you look at people like Chris Chester and Ian Watson up in Super League, Neil Kelly and what he's done there, I think it just shows that we have some really, really good homegrown coaches in the competition.
One of which I'd add to is James Ford at York, who's done the most fantastic job. I think when you think that when the fixtures came out for League One this season, York were omitted because we weren't even sure they were going to be a club. And to finish 4th and the way they've marketed their game against Toronto this week at the start of the 8th, the fact that their stadium is now going to be built, and we know what issues there are with at least 2 Super League clubs that can't seem to have a stadium built. They're getting crowds now over 1,000. I think that has been a remarkable transformation this year.
Well, we're talking about Coach of the Year. What about John Sharp, the job he's done at Featherstone? You know, getting them into the top 4 as was his target, and then bang, off you go, son.
It's a funny old world, isn't it? And it comes down to personalities.
It's a bit like, was it Gary Thornton a couple of years ago as the York coach who won Coach of the Year and picked his prize up, having been sacked the week before?
It comes down to those human dynamics that quite often the fans don't see, the players aren't necessarily aware of, and the wider public. A shame for John Sharp, but he's a talented guy. He'll bounce back. I wish John Duffy well now, finishing the job with Featherstone, but it will be difficult. It will be tough.
Great opportunity for John Duffy. I mean, he's a really likeable character, John Duffy. I used to bump into him a bit when he was a Swinton coach. His office was like our local coffee shop, and he'd be in there doing all his homework. So, I mean, a great chance for him.
Spoken to him a couple of times, and seems like a really, really nice guy. He's, I think it's a big opportunity for him. Obviously, going to a dyed-in-the-wool rugby league town. You'd wonder what would be constituted success if John Sharp is deemed not to be a success with them. They were 3rd in the table at the time. But I think one thing that the chairman, Mark Campbell, said was he didn't like the style of rugby being played. You talk to anyone in the Championship and they'll say Swinton are the most attractive team to watch. So if you can bring that to Featherstone, it will be appreciated at Featherstone. They have some talented players there. They're a good team, Featherstone. I think they'll shake things up a little bit in the 8s as well. They lost all the games in the 8s last year in the qualifiers. I think they might surprise 1 or 2 people this year, and it'll be interesting to see whether Duffy can sort of make his mark so quickly, though. He's only had a couple of weeks before the 8th. Strange time.
I'd just ask if Mark Campbell would be happy if Featherstone played the most attractive rugby in the division and finished 8th and got £150,000. It's an interesting balance.
We'll ring him up when we're finished. We'll ask him that very question. And London Broncos, you know, that goes under everybody's radar these days, what's happening at London Broncos. But Hendo has done
hasn't he been terrific?
Yeah,
really has. And again, a good news story.
Can you see them in the Super League next year?
No.
Yes.
Oh.
I think they're the same as St Helens are the wild card in Super League at the moment. I think London are, and on the basis of the fact that they were in the qualifiers last year, I think they drew a lot of experience from that. Their form going into it is as good as anybody's. They're scoring a lot of points. They've got a very settled team. The balance of the team that they've got as well includes some young London talent coming through. There's a confidence about them. Nobody's going to want to go and play down there. That is a tight, difficult pitch to play. At whose cost,
though, Phil?
Well, I just think
because they've got to get over the top of Hull.
They are capable of getting into the £1 million game.
Well, you could have,
And an 80 minutes against a Widnes lacking confidence or a Lee in desperation. I just think they're the wild card this year.
Okay. But does the game want them in Super League next year?
No.
Because they can't play there, can they? If they're in Super League, they can't play in Ealing, where they are at the moment.
There's a lot of work to do. I mean, I went down there when Leeds played there last year, and it's a nice, tidy setup, but it's a bit like non-league football. It's a long way short of being a Super League setup. The crowds haven't really increased. I mean, they're still playing in front of a few hundred rather than 1,000. They are making progress. I think I'd love to see them back in Super League, but I think now it's probably a little bit too early. But they are heading in the right direction. I think they're in a stronger situation now than at the end of their time in Super League. They are making progress. It's good to see.
What we shouldn't forget is that their under-19s have been significant this year. They've beaten Wigan, they've beaten Leeds. They are now getting that core of young player coming through in the south of England, that reservoir of talent that the sport needs. I mean, we only need to look at Mike McMeekin, who is arguably going to be one of the candidates for Man of Steel this year, who has come through that. Louis McCarthy-Scarisbrooke again, who's coming to the end of a career, but you know, as a 16-year-old had never even heard of rugby league, and it was through that Broncos academy system that brought him into the sport. I think they can bring a lot to Super League. The only thing they can't bring at the moment is a discernible crowd, but I'm not sure that should be the reason to worry about them.
Okay, well, let's go to some of your questions we put out on Twitter. If you want to ask a question, send us a selfie via Twitter, and here's the first of those questions right here.
Hi, I'm Aaron Wharton, and my question is, are the RFL serious about asking League One expansion clubs, whatever they are, if they want to stay in the league?
Well, thanks for that. I mean, it's a good question as well. I mean, we look kind of down our noses at some of those clubs in League One, and in some Hemels, I think with good reason, because they're not even based in Hemel. But I mean, an interview this week with Regan Grace talking about he'd never heard of rugby league as a 13-year-old, and then they were offering the chance to play at his local South Wales club, Tookit, and became what he is, and hopefully what he could be. I mean, that shows the importance, and we've got to keep our roots in these places because we're unearthing these gems.
I think one of the problems that we have, we talked about London Broncos a minute ago, and that is they're properly expanding as we would like to see an expansion club be. You know, organic, bringing young players through, developing their own systems and structures. That is happening in a lot of community clubs in South Wales. It is happening around the South East and around the country. I think the problem that we have is we've tried to create semi-professional clubs without the stability or the base. And Hemel were, I remember Hemel as a summer conference, a good little club, Phil.
20 years ago,
who played at a good level.
Yeah.
But now, chasing the dollar, chasing results in a structure that just is not fit for purpose, I would argue, they've sacrificed that. Yeah. And we've actually lost the expansion that we'd achieved.
I think there's two things. One is we've missed a golden opportunity. Top down has never worked and will never work. It's grassroots up. We had the Rugby League conference when the sport switched to summer. There was a lot of interest in what we'd term non-heartland areas, particularly for rugby union clubs to use their facilities 24/7. They embraced rugby league, and for 15 years we were building something from the grassroots up. A decision was taken without really any goal or aim in mind as to what we wanted of these clubs, to transplant 3 or 4 semi-professional clubs into those areas, which killed off some of those grassroots. So I think we've missed a golden opportunity there. The other thing as well is, what is the plan for these clubs? When they came into League One, it was supposed to be a development league. They were playing like against like. We've since brought in full-time Toulouse, full-time Toronto. That's hurt them as much.
Yeah. Okay, right, we'll go to another question right now. Here it is.
My name is Jamie McDonald, and my question is, how damaging could the World Rugby League Federation be to our domestic game?
Thank you. And if you thought the face looked familiar, that was Jamie McDonald, who's the world bantamweight champion in the WBA division as well. So we've got celebrities watching us. Quickly on that one, Phil, the World Rugby League Federation.
This is rugby league. You have to have 2 governing bodies for everything.
Right.
Just forget it.
So this is and who's behind this?
I think it's some people who are disenchanted with the Rugby League International Federation, but that is now starting to grow some foundation. We need to stick with that.
Okay, so the Rugby League Federation is...
We don't need another federation.
It's not going to happen.
It's not boxing.
It's not
we don't
happen.
need 6 different divisions to have belts.
Don't take it personally, Jamie. Right, thank you very much.
Pete Smith said that, not me.
Right, okay. That's it as far as we go for this month's programme. Here's a quick reminder of what you can watch on this channel in the next week or so. Well, starting this Saturday in the NRL, the Newcastle Knights against the Dragons. That's live at 6 a.m. The South Sydney Rabbitohs against the Canberra Raiders is live at 8:30, and it finishes all off with the Roosters against the Cowboys at 10:30. That's all on Saturday. And on Sunday, coming up on Sunday, this Sunday, the 30th of July, the first of Toronto's playoff games. It's a delayed screening here on Premier Sports. 6 o'clock you can watch that, so you can go to the game and then come back home and watch it on the telly. York City Knights against Toronto at Bootham Crescent. And you can check out all of this and more at www.premiersports.tv. And don't forget, if you want to appear on Backchat in a video selfie, then send your question to @RL Backchat. Well, that's as far as we go as far as this month's programme is concerned. Thank you very much to Danny Lockwood, to Phil Kaplan, and also to Pete Smith, and we'll see you in a month's time.